Listen carefully. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning. You reach for your phone just for a moment, just to check the time. 5 minutes later, you're scrolling. 20 minutes later, you're consuming information you never intended to see. An hour later, your attention belongs to someone else. And the strangest part, you barely noticed it happening. Now imagine repeating that process every day, not for a week, not for a month, but for years. Years of fragmented attention, years of distractions disguised as entertainment, years of reacting instead of directing, years of living according to impulses that do not feel like impulses because they have become normal. This is where the story begins. Not with a lack of discipline, not with laziness, not with weakness, but with a disturbing possibility. What if your life does not belong to you as much as you think it does? What if invisible forces are quietly competing for your attention every second of every day? And what if many of them are winning? Most men spend years asking the wrong question. They ask why they cannot stay motivated, why they cannot remain consistent, why they cannot focus on their goals, why they abandon ambitions that once felt important. They blame themselves. They assume something is broken within them. A lack of willpower, a lack of discipline, a lack of character. But what if the problem is far more complicated than that? What if your attention has been captured? Because attention is not merely awareness. Attention is direction. And direction determines destiny. Think about it. Whatever receives your attention eventually shapes your thoughts. Your thoughts shape your actions. Your actions shape your habits. And your habits quietly shape your future. This means that attention may be the most valuable resource in human history. Not gold, not land, not information. Attention. Because whoever controls your attention influences the person you become. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something remarkable about power. Power rarely depends upon force alone. The most effective forms of control are often invisible. People resist chains they can see. They rarely resist chains they mistake for freedom. This is why manipulation becomes most powerful when it feels voluntary, when people believe they are choosing what has already been chosen for them. Centuries ago, rulers competed for territory. Today, institutions compete for attention, and attention has become the battlefield. Every notification, every advertisement, every endless feed, every algorithm, every carefully engineered distraction, all competing for the same thing: your focus. Your time, your mind, your life. The modern world has created something unprecedented, a system where billions of dollars are spent learning how to capture human attention. Not because attention is valuable, because attention is everything. The moment someone controls what you focus on, they begin influencing what you desire, what you fear, what you believe, what you buy, what you pursue, and eventually who you become. This creates a troubling question. How many of your desires are truly yours? How many goals were chosen consciously? How many beliefs emerged independently, and how many were planted, reinforced, and repeated until they felt natural? Most people never stop long enough to ask these questions. Because distraction creates an illusion of movement. You feel busy, you feel occupied, you feel stimulated. Yet despite constant activity, nothing meaningful changes. Days pass, weeks pass, years pass, and one day a person wakes up wondering where their potential went, wondering why their ambitions faded, wondering why they never became the person they imagined. The answer is rarely dramatic. There was no single moment of defeat, No catastrophic failure, no defining collapse. There was only distraction, small distractions, harmless distractions, comfortable distractions, repeated thousands of times until they became a lifestyle. And this is where the psychological tension begins. Because perhaps your greatest enemy is not another person, not bad luck, not lack of opportunity, but a fragmented mind, a mind pulled in 100 different directions, a mind constantly reacting, a mind that has forgotten how to focus deeply on anything for long enough to transform it. Machiavelli observed that power belongs to those who understand reality as it is, not as they wish it to be. And reality today is uncomfortable. The average person is not losing a battle against competitors, they are losing a battle against distraction. Every dream requires sustained attention. Every skill requires sustained attention. Every meaningful achievement requires sustained attention. Remove attention and progress collapses. Remove focus and potential remains unrealized. This leads to an identity shift, a realization that changes everything. I am not unfocused because I am weak. I am unfocused because I am fighting a war I cannot see. Read that carefully. Because the moment you understand that distraction is not an accident, but an environment, you stop blaming yourself blindly. You begin seeing the battlefield. You begin recognizing the forces competing for your attention, and once you can see the battlefield, you can finally begin fighting back. But before we learn how to become dangerously focused, we must first understand why distraction has become the most powerful weapon of modern society. Pay close attention. If attention is the most valuable resource in the modern world, then a question naturally follows. Who is trying to take it? The answer is uncomfortable. Almost everyone. Every time you open a social media app, enter a website, watch a video, read a headline, or scroll through a feed, you are entering an invisible marketplace. Not a marketplace for products, a marketplace for attention. Your attention. The average person believes they are the customer, but often they are the product. Because behind every notification, recommendation, headline, and algorithm exists a simple objective. Keep you engaged, keep you watching, keep you scrolling, keep you consuming. The longer your attention remains captured, the more valuable you become. This is why some of the most powerful companies in history are no longer selling products alone. They are selling human attention. And to do that, they must first learn how to control it. Niccolò Machiavelli understood something fundamental about power. The most effective form of influence is the kind that feels voluntary. People resist commands. They question authority. They challenge restrictions. But they rarely challenge desires they believe are their own. This is where modern distraction becomes extraordinarily powerful. Because it rarely arrives as an enemy. It arrives as entertainment, as convenience, as curiosity, as pleasure. And that makes it difficult to recognize. Consider social media. You open an app for a few minutes. You intend to check one thing, yet somehow 30 minutes disappear. Then an hour, then another. Why? Because these systems are not designed merely to inform you, they are designed to retain you. Psychologists often refer to one of the mechanisms behind this as a dopamine loop. Dopamine is not simply the chemical of pleasure. It is the chemical of anticipation, the chemical of wanting, the chemical that whispers, maybe the next swipe will be interesting, maybe the next notification will matter, maybe the next video will be worth it, and so you continue again and again and again. Then comes something even more powerful. Variable rewards, one of the strongest psychological mechanisms ever discovered. Imagine a slot machine. Most pulls produce nothing, but occasionally a reward appears. That uncertainty keeps people engaged, because the brain becomes fascinated by possibility. Modern technology uses the same principle. Most content is forgettable, but occasionally you discover something exciting, something surprising, something emotionally stimulating, and your brain remembers that possibility. Not certainty, possibility. This keeps you returning, not because you are weak, because you are human. And human psychology responds predictably to these patterns. Then comes instant gratification, the modern world's favorite addiction. Why endure discomfort when entertainment is available immediately? Why tolerate boredom when stimulation is won? Swipe away? Why work toward a distant reward when a smaller reward is available now? The problem is not that pleasure exists. The problem is that constant pleasure weakens patience, and patience is the foundation of achievement. Every meaningful goal requires delayed gratification. Building a business, developing a skill, improving your body, mastering a craft, creating a legacy, all require sustained effort without immediate rewards. But distraction trains the brain in the opposite direction. It conditions people to expect constant stimulation, constant novelty, constant excitement. And when real life cannot compete with endless entertainment, ambition begins to suffer. Purpose begins to weaken. Long-term thinking begins to disappear. This is where the consequences become serious. Because distraction does not merely consume time, it fragments attention, and fragmented attention struggles to produce extraordinary results. Think about the most focused individuals in history. Scientists, inventors, leaders, writers, strategists, visionaries. They accomplished remarkable things because they could remain engaged with a single problem for extended periods. Deep work created deep results. But deep work becomes nearly impossible when attention is constantly interrupted. This is why distraction is not neutral. It shapes outcomes, it shapes behavior, and ultimately it shapes destiny. Machiavelli observed that power often works best when people do not realize they are being influenced. The same principle applies today. The most effective distractions are not those that feel forced. They are those that feel natural, normal, harmless, even enjoyable. And that is precisely what makes them dangerous. Take a moment to reflect on something. How much of your day belongs to you, and how much belongs to someone else's agenda? Do not answer quickly, because that question reveals more than most people want to admit. Every hour spent reacting is an hour not spent creating. Every moment spent consuming is a moment not spent building. Every distraction carries an opportunity cost, a future that could have existed, but never did. This leads us to an important identity shift. My attention is my territory. Read that again. My attention is my territory. Because once you understand that attention is valuable, you stop treating it casually. You stop giving it away freely. You stop allowing every notification, trend, and distraction to dictate your focus. You begin guarding it, protecting it, directing it. But before you can fully reclaim your attention, you must understand something even deeper. The greatest source of distraction is not outside you. It is inside you. And to master focus, we must first understand why the human mind naturally seeks distraction in the first place. There is an uncomfortable truth most people never realize. The greatest obstacle between you and your goals may not be the world around you. It may be your own mind, because if distraction were purely an external problem, solving it would be easy. You could simply delete the apps, turn off the notifications, avoid the websites, and suddenly become focused. But that rarely happens. The reason is simple. Distraction succeeds because it speaks to something already living inside you, a weakness, a desire, a fear, an instinct older than civilization itself. To understand this, we must travel thousands of years into the past. Long before smartphones, long before social media, long before modern technology, your ancestors lived in a world of uncertainty. Food was scarce. Danger was everywhere. Survival depended on paying attention to anything new, anything pleasurable, and anything potentially threatening. The human brain evolved to notice novelty, to seek rewards, to avoid discomfort. These instincts once helped us survive. Today, they often prevent us from thriving, because the modern world has learned how to exploit ancient instincts. Your brain still craves novelty, still seeks immediate rewards, still avoids pain whenever possible, and distraction offers all three. It offers novelty through endless content, reward through constant stimulation, and escape from discomfort. This is why distractions feel irresistible, not because they are powerful, because they are perfectly designed for the human mind. But there is something even deeper happening beneath the surface. Many distractions are not entertainment at all. They are escape mechanisms. Think about the moments when you procrastinate the most, the moments when you avoid important work, the moments when you suddenly feel the urge to check your phone. Watch another video, refresh another page. Are you really seeking entertainment, or are you avoiding something else? Perhaps failure, because if you never fully commit to your goal, you never have to discover whether you might fail. Perhaps rejection, because pursuing meaningful ambitions often exposes you to criticism and judgment. Perhaps responsibility, because success creates expectations, and expectations create pressure. Or perhaps the deepest fear of all, the fear of confronting your own potential, because potential is exciting in theory, but terrifying in reality. As long as a dream remains unfinished, it remains perfect, untested, safe. The moment you pursue it seriously, reality enters the equation, and reality can be uncomfortable. Niccolò Machiavelli spent much of his life studying power, leadership, and human behavior. One lesson appears repeatedly throughout his observations. Human beings are rarely defeated by external enemies alone. More often, they are weakened by internal enemies first. Fear, indecision, comfort, complacency, self-deception. Long before a kingdom falls from invasion, it often weakens from within. The same principle applies to individuals. Many people believe they are fighting circumstances. In truth, they are fighting themselves. Consider the dream abandoned after years of planning, the business never started, the book never written, the skill never mastered, the opportunity never pursued. Most of these dreams do not die dramatically, they die quietly, buried beneath distractions that seemed harmless at the time. One video becomes 10, one delay becomes a habit, one excuse becomes a lifestyle. And eventually a person wakes up wondering where the years went. This is why the greatest prison is the one that feels comfortable. A prison made of convenience, a prison made of entertainment, a prison made of endless distractions that ask for nothing today while quietly stealing tomorrow. The tragedy is not that people lack talent. It is that many never give their talent enough uninterrupted attention to develop. The tragedy is not a lack of potential. It is a lack of protection. Protection from impulses, protection from comfort, protection from the endless forces competing for control of the mind. This leads to another identity shift. I do not lack potential. I lack protection from distraction. Read that again. I do not lack potential. I lack protection from distraction, because once you understand this, the problem changes. You stop viewing yourself as broken. You stop assuming you need more motivation. Instead, you begin recognizing the real enemy. Not laziness, not weakness, not lack of intelligence, but a system of distractions working together with ancient instincts to pull you away from your highest priorities. And this realization changes everything, because once you identify the enemy, you can begin reclaiming control. And the first step toward reclaiming control is learning a principle that Machiavelli understood well. Power is often gained not by adding more things to your life, but by eliminating what weakens you. Most people believe success is about adding more habits, more productivity systems, more information, more opportunities, more goals, more strategies, more effort. But history suggests something very different. The most powerful individuals often become powerful not because they accumulate more things, but because they eliminate what does not matter. This is one of the oldest principles of strategy, and one of the most ignored. Think about military commanders throughout history. When facing a complex battlefield, they rarely win by fighting everywhere at once. They win by concentrating force, by removing unnecessary objectives, by focusing resources on what truly matters. Power comes from concentration. Weakness comes from dispersion. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this principle deeply. When studying leadership, politics, and power, he repeatedly emphasized clarity of purpose. A leader pursuing 10 conflicting goals becomes ineffective. A leader pursuing one objective with relentless focus becomes dangerous. The same principle applies to your life. Most people are not overwhelmed because they lack time. They are overwhelmed because too many things are competing for their attention. Their energy is scattered. Their focus is fragmented. Their priorities are unclear. And as a result, progress slows. Imagine sunlight spread across an entire field. It feels warm. Concentrated through a magnifying glass, it can start a fire. The energy is the same. The difference is focus. The difference is concentration. This is why strategic subtraction becomes essential. Not adding more, removing more. Because every unnecessary commitment steals attention from something important. Every distraction taxes mental energy. Every meaningless obligation creates hidden costs. And over time, those costs become enormous. The first form of clutter is digital clutter. Thousands of notifications, endless feeds, unread messages, constant interruptions. Many people wake up and immediately surrender their attention to devices before they think, before they create, before they pursue their goals. Someone else has already occupied their mind. This creates a life of reaction rather than intention, a life where external signals dictate internal priorities. Focused individuals understand something important. Every notification is a request. And not every request deserves an answer. Then there is social clutter, perhaps even more dangerous. Not every relationship adds value. Not every conversation deserves attention. Not every social obligation contributes to growth. Some relationships inspire progress. Others quietly consume energy. Some people challenge you to become better. Others normalize mediocrity. This is uncomfortable to admit, but the people around you influence what you consider acceptable. Their habits affect your habits. Their standards affect your standards. Their ambitions affect your ambitions. This is why strategic focus sometimes requires social distance. Not from everyone, only from influences that pull you away from your purpose. Then comes mental clutter, unfinished decisions, unnecessary worries, constant overthinking. The human mind was not designed to carry hundreds of unresolved thoughts simultaneously. Every unresolved concern occupies space. Every unnecessary decision consumes energy. Every mental distraction reduces clarity, and clarity is one of the most valuable assets a focused individual can possess. Finally, there is emotional clutter. Old resentments, lingering regrets, imaginary arguments, past failures, future anxieties. Many people are physically present but mentally trapped elsewhere. Their attention remains attached to experiences they cannot change, and because of this, they struggle to invest fully in the present. Machiavelli understood that effective leadership requires emotional discipline. A leader consumed by emotion becomes predictable. A leader controlled by the past loses influence over the future. The same principle applies to personal focus. Every emotional burden carries a hidden cost. Not because emotions are bad, but because unresolved emotions consume attention, and attention is finite. This brings us to a profound realization. Simplicity creates power. Not because simplicity is easy, but because simplicity creates clarity. Clarity creates focus, and focus creates results. Take a moment to consider a difficult question. What in your life consumes energy without creating value? Think carefully, because the answer may reveal exactly where your attention is leaking. Perhaps it is a habit. Perhaps it is a relationship. Perhaps it is a digital addiction. Perhaps it is a belief. Whatever it is, the principle remains the same. Every distraction you remove creates space for something meaningful. Every unnecessary burden eliminated increases available energy. Every source of noise removed strengthens your ability to hear what truly matters. This leads to another identity shift. Every distraction I remove strengthens my future. Read that again. Every distraction I remove strengthens my future. Because focus is not merely about concentration, it is about protection. Protecting your attention, protecting your energy, protecting your potential. And once you begin eliminating the unnecessary, something remarkable happens. Life becomes clearer. Priorities become obvious. Decisions become easier. Progress becomes faster. But removing distractions is only half the battle. Because nature abhors a vacuum. If you eliminate distractions without creating something meaningful to replace them, old habits eventually return. Which brings us to the next lesson. The most focused men in history did not simply remove distractions. They built something more powerful. A purpose so compelling that distraction could no longer compete with it. Removing distractions is powerful, but it is not enough, because the human mind does not like emptiness. If you remove distractions without replacing them with something meaningful, your attention will eventually wander back to the very things you escaped. This is why so many people fail. They focus on what they are trying to avoid instead of what they are trying to become. And there is a profound difference between the two. Imagine two men. The first is constantly fighting distractions. Every day feels like a battle. Every temptation feels overwhelming. Every interruption feels impossible to resist. The second man faces the same world, the same distractions, the same temptations, the same endless opportunities to waste time. Yet somehow he remains focused. Why? Because his attention is occupied by something larger. A mission, a purpose, an obsession. Something so meaningful that distractions begin to lose their appeal. This is one of the most misunderstood truths about focus. Focus is rarely created by willpower alone. Focus is often the natural consequence of purpose. When a person knows exactly what they want, attention begins organizing itself around that objective. Energy becomes concentrated. Decisions become clearer. Sacrifices become easier. Because meaning creates direction, and direction creates focus. Throughout history, the most focused individuals were rarely motivated by comfort. Inventors obsessed over ideas, explorers obsessed over discovery, leaders obsessed over vision, artists obsessed over creation, visionaries obsessed over possibilities others could not yet see. Their focus did not come from discipline alone. It came from significance, from believing that what they pursued mattered. Niccolò Machiavelli understood this principle well. When analyzing leaders, rulers, and ambitious individuals, he observed that those who achieved extraordinary influence were often driven by objectives larger than personal comfort. They possessed long-term aims, clear ambitions, defined missions, and because of that, short-term distractions lost much of their power. This reveals an important psychological reality. Attention naturally follows meaning. Think about the things you care about most. Notice how effortlessly your attention moves toward them. Notice how easily you make time for them. Notice how naturally you prioritize them. Now think about goals you constantly postpone, projects you never finish, dreams you rarely pursue. Often the issue is not capability. The issue is connection. The goal lacks emotional significance. It exists in theory, but not in identity. This is why many people struggle with focus. Not because they lack discipline, because they lack a compelling reason to be disciplined. Without purpose, distraction wins. Without meaning, comfort becomes irresistible. Without a mission, attention drifts toward whatever offers immediate gratification. This is not weakness. It is human nature. The mind seeks direction. And if you do not provide direction intentionally, the world will provide it for you. Social media will provide it. Entertainment will provide it. Advertising will provide it. Other people's priorities will provide it. This is why purpose is more than motivation. Purpose is protection. It protects attention from fragmentation. It protects energy from waste. It protects time from meaningless consumption. A man with a mission rarely loses himself in distractions. Read that carefully. A man with a mission rarely loses himself in distractions, because distractions promise temporary satisfaction. A mission promises transformation. Distractions offer comfort. Purpose offers meaning. Distractions consume attention. Purpose organizes attention. And once you experience the power of genuine purpose, something remarkable begins to happen. You stop asking how to stay motivated. You start asking how to protect what matters. Your relationship with focus changes completely. It is no longer about forcing yourself to work. It becomes about defending something valuable, defending your future, defending your vision, defending the person you are becoming. This creates another identity shift. My purpose is stronger than my impulses. Read that again. My purpose is stronger than my impulses, because impulses are temporary. Purpose is enduring. Impulses change with emotion. Purpose survives emotion. Impulses seek comfort. Purpose seeks meaning, and meaning is one of the strongest psychological forces in human existence. If you're fascinated by psychology, Machiavellian strategy, power, and the hidden forces that shape human behavior, consider subscribing, because these are exactly the kinds of ideas we explore regularly. Not to glorify control over others, but to understand the forces that determine whether we control ourselves. Yet there is one final challenge. Even the strongest purpose can fail. Even the clearest mission can collapse. Even the most meaningful ambition can be abandoned. Because purpose alone is not enough. A mission without discipline remains a dream, and to truly become dangerously focused, you must master the force that protects purpose when motivation disappears. You must master yourself. Most people believe focus is a battle against distraction, but that is only part of the story. The deeper battle is happening within, because distractions are rarely the true enemy. They are often symptoms of emotions we do not know how to manage. Think about the moments when you abandon your plans, when you break your routines, when you delay important work, when you choose comfort over progress. What happened just before that decision? In many cases, it was not a lack of knowledge, not a lack of intelligence, not even a lack of ambition. It was an emotional state. Perhaps boredom, perhaps stress, perhaps loneliness, perhaps anxiety. The emotion appeared first, the distraction followed second, and because most people never learn to separate emotions from actions, they become prisoners of their internal weather. A bad mood becomes a bad day. A bad day becomes a bad week. A bad week becomes a bad year. And eventually, a person begins believing their emotions control their destiny. But the most focused individuals understand something different. They understand that emotions are real, but they are not rulers. They are signals, information, temporary experiences passing through the mind. Niccolò Machiavelli spent his life studying power. Most people associate his work with politics, strategy, and leadership. But beneath all of those subjects lies a deeper principle. The person who cannot govern himself cannot effectively govern anything else. A ruler controlled by anger becomes predictable. A leader controlled by fear becomes hesitant. A strategist controlled by impulse becomes vulnerable. The same principle applies to ordinary life. If boredom controls your actions, your future belongs to boredom. If stress controls your actions, your future belongs to stress. If anxiety controls your actions, your future belongs to anxiety. True power begins when emotions stop making decisions on your behalf. This is why emotional discipline is the foundation of focus. Consider boredom. Modern society treats boredom as a problem, something to eliminate immediately. The moment boredom appears, people reach for their phones. Open another app, watch another video, seek another distraction. But boredom is not dangerous. In fact, boredom often appears at the exact moment meaningful work begins. Because meaningful work is not always exciting. Growth is not always stimulating. Mastery is not always entertaining. The ability to remain present despite boredom is one of the rarest forms of strength. Then there is loneliness. Many people sabotage their goals because they cannot tolerate temporary isolation. The path toward excellence often requires periods of separation, moments when others do not understand your priorities, moments when your vision feels invisible, moments when progress happens quietly, without applause, without recognition, without validation. Those who require constant approval often abandon their purpose the moment approval disappears. Those who possess emotional discipline continue anyway. Stress creates another challenge. Under pressure, human beings naturally seek relief. The easiest form of relief is distraction, but relief and resolution are not the same thing. Temporary escape may reduce discomfort, yet it rarely solves the underlying problem. Focused individuals understand this distinction. They move toward challenges instead of away from them, because they know discomfort is often the price of progress. And then there is anxiety. Perhaps the most powerful emotional trigger of all. Anxiety convinces people to delay action until they feel ready, until they feel confident, until uncertainty disappears. But confidence rarely arrives before action. It usually arrives because of action. This is why waiting for the perfect emotional state is such a dangerous strategy. If you only act when you feel motivated, progress becomes inconsistent. If you only act when you feel confident, growth becomes limited. If you only act when you feel comfortable, transformation becomes impossible. The most focused people do not organize their lives around feelings. They organize their lives around principles. Principles remain stable when emotions fluctuate. Principles remain reliable when motivation disappears. Principles create consistency, and consistency creates results. Take a moment to reflect on something. Are your actions controlled by your goals or your moods? It is an uncomfortable question, because many people discover they have spent years obeying temporary emotions while neglecting permanent ambitions. This realization creates a profound shift in identity. My emotions advise me, they do not command me. Read that again. My emotions advise me, they do not command me, because emotions contain information, but they do not contain authority. You can feel fear and still move forward. You can feel stress and still remain disciplined. You can feel boredom and still continue working. You can feel uncertainty and still take action. That is what freedom looks like. Not the absence of emotion, but independence from emotional control. And once emotional discipline becomes strong enough, something remarkable happens. Focus stops feeling like effort. It stops feeling like a daily struggle. It begins transforming into something deeper, something more permanent. Because the final stage of dangerous focus is not a habit. It is not a routine. It is not a productivity system. It is an identity. And when focus becomes identity, everything changes. Everything we have discussed so far leads to one final realization. Focus is not a productivity technique. It is not a morning routine. It is not a collection of habits. It is not an app. It is not a system. Focus, in its highest form, is identity, and this is where most people fail to understand the game they are playing. They spend years trying to focus, trying to become disciplined, trying to resist distractions, trying to stay motivated. But there is a hidden weakness in that approach, because whenever you are constantly trying to become something, You are unconsciously reinforcing the belief that you are not that thing already. The person who says, "I am trying to be disciplined," often behaves differently from the person who says, "I'm disciplined." The difference appears small, but psychologically it is enormous. One is negotiating with identity, the other is acting from identity. This is why lasting transformation rarely occurs when behavior changes first. It occurs when self-image changes first, because human beings naturally seek consistency between their actions and their identity. A person who sees himself as healthy makes different decisions. A person who sees himself as a leader behaves differently. A person who sees himself as focused protects attention differently. His standards change, his priorities change, his tolerance for distraction changes, and gradually, his entire life changes. Niccolò Machiavelli understood that perception shapes reality. Most people interpret this idea only in political terms, but it applies equally to personal development. The reputation you build in the minds of others influences how they treat you. The reputation you build in your own mind influences how you treat yourself. And often, the second is even more important. Because before the world respects your standards, you must respect them. Before others recognize your discipline, you must embody it. Before others believe in your mission, you must commit to it. This is where dangerous focus begins to emerge, not as intensity, not as obsession alone, but as identity, a quiet certainty, a calm determination, a refusal to be pulled away from what matters. Think about the most disciplined individuals you have ever encountered. They rarely appear frantic. They rarely appear desperate. They rarely spend their time convincing others of their seriousness. Their focus is visible through behavior, through consistency, through repeated actions, day after day, month after month, year after year. And eventually, something remarkable happens. Distraction loses influence, not because distractions disappear, but because the individual has changed. The same temptations remain, the same opportunities for procrastination remain, the same sources of entertainment remain, yet their power weakens, because identity has become stronger than impulse. This is one of the deepest forms of freedom. A person controlled by every impulse can be manipulated. A person controlled by every emotion can be manipulated. A person controlled by every trend can be manipulated. But a person guided by a clear mission becomes increasingly difficult to control. This is why focus is ultimately about power, not power over others. Power over yourself, the ability to direct your own attention, the ability to choose your priorities, the ability to determine what deserves your energy and what does not. Machiavelli spent his life studying the forces that influence human behavior. If he were observing the modern world, he would likely recognize something immediately. The greatest battles are no longer fought on physical battlefields. They are fought in the mind, for attention, for influence, for belief, for focus, and the individuals who win those battles are not necessarily the smartest, not necessarily the most talented, not necessarily the most fortunate. They are often the ones who remain focused long enough for their efforts to compound. Because consistency creates momentum. Momentum creates results. Results create confidence. And confidence strengthens identity. This creates a cycle few people ever experience. A cycle where discipline stops feeling forced. A cycle where focus becomes natural. a cycle where purpose begins directing behavior automatically. This is what dangerous focus truly looks like. Calm, intentional, unshakable. Purpose, driven. Not loud, not arrogant, not obsessed with appearances. Simply committed. Committed to a vision larger than comfort. Committed to a future larger than today's distractions. Committed to becoming the person capable of achieving meaningful goals. Remember this quote: "The world cannot distract a man who knows exactly where he is going." Read it again. The world cannot distract a man who knows exactly where he is going, because clarity eliminates confusion, purpose eliminates wandering, identity eliminates negotiation. This leads to the final identity statement. I do not chase every opportunity. I protect my mission. Read that once more. I do not chase every opportunity. I protect my mission. Because not everything deserves your attention. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everything deserves your life. And when you finally understand that, focus stops being something you practice. It becomes someone you are. Which brings us back to the question we began with. If attention is the most valuable resource in the modern world, what happens when you finally take it back? We began this journey with a simple but unsettling question. What if your attention no longer belonged to you? What if the endless distractions, constant stimulation, and invisible influences surrounding you were not random accidents, but forces competing for control over your life? Now, after everything we have explored, the answer should be clearer. The battle was never just about productivity. It was never just about discipline. It was never just about time management. It was about power. Because wherever attention goes, life follows. And whoever controls your attention influences your future. This is the hidden truth most people never fully understand. The modern world does not fear strong men. It fears focused men. Strength alone can be distracted. Talent alone can be manipulated. Intelligence alone can be misdirected. But focus changes everything. A focused man becomes difficult to influence, difficult to control, difficult to derail, because he has learned something rare. He understands what deserves his attention and what does not. Think about the lessons we uncovered. First, you discovered that attention is the most valuable resource in the modern age. Then you saw how entire industries compete relentlessly for it. You learned how distraction became profitable, how algorithms, notifications, and endless entertainment are designed to capture awareness and keep it occupied.
You explored the uncomfortable reality that many distraction tools are not forms of entertainment at all. They are escape mechanisms, ways of avoiding fear, avoiding responsibility, avoiding uncertainty, avoiding the uncomfortable work required to become who you could be. You learned the power of strategic elimination. That success is often less about adding more and more to your life and more about removing what weakens it. Removing digital clutter. Removing mental clutter. Removing emotional clutter. Removing anything that consumes energy without creating value. You discovered that purpose is the natural enemy of distraction, that a meaningful mission organizes attention, that a man with a compelling reason to focus rarely needs constant motivation. You explored emotional discipline, the ability to act according to principles rather than temporary moods, the ability to remain committed when motivation fades, the ability to govern your internal world before attempting to influence anything external. And finally, you reach the deepest transformation of all, the realization that focus is not a habit, it is an identity. It is not something you do occasionally, it is someone you become. This idea would not have surprised Machiavelli. Throughout his observations of leaders, rulers, and ambitious individuals, one pattern appeared repeatedly. Destiny belongs to those who direct themselves, not those who are directed by circumstances, not those who react endlessly to the world around them, but those who possess clarity, intention, and control. This brings us to the final paradox. The goal is not becoming productive. The goal is becoming impossible to control. Read that again. The goal is not becoming productive. The goal is becoming impossible to control. Because when your attention belongs to you, your choices belong to you. When your choices belong to you, your future belongs to you, and that is where real power begins. Not in controlling others, not in domination, not in manipulation, but in self-mastery, in the ability to decide what matters and remain loyal to it. In a world designed to fragment your attention, that may be the rarest form of freedom. If you're fascinated by psychology, Machiavellian strategy, power, human nature, and the hidden forces that shape our decisions, consider subscribing, because these are the kinds of ideas we explore regularly. Not to escape reality, but to understand it more deeply, and perhaps to understand ourselves. Before you leave, consider one final question. What would your life look like if every day reflected your highest priorities instead of your strongest distractions? Think about that carefully, because your answer contains the blueprint for your future. The person you become 5 years from now will largely be determined by what receives your attention today. Every choice matters, every hour matters, every distraction matters, every moment of focus matters. Because focus determines action. Action determines habits. Habits determine character. And character determines destiny. So perhaps the most dangerous man in the room is not the loudest, not the strongest, not the most talented. Perhaps it is the man who knows exactly where he is going and refuses to surrender his attention to anything that pulls him away from that path. The man who understands that his mind is his territory, his purpose is his compass, and his attention is his greatest weapon. The moment you reclaim your attention, you reclaim your future.